It was 11:42 on a Tuesday night. I was still awake, sitting in the dark, the blue light of my monitor reflecting in my glasses as I finished a supply chain audit. My phone buzzed against the mahogany desk. It was a text from my sister, Alyssa, regarding the upcoming renovation reveal party for our father's lake house, a renovation I had funded with $52,000 of my own savings. The text read, "Hey, don't come this weekend. Dad thinks you ruin the aesthetic for the photos. We'll send you pics." I stared at the pixels, waiting for the punchline. But seconds later, a small icon bubbled up underneath her message. Thomas liked, "Hey, don't come this weekend." My father hearted my exclusion. I didn't blink. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the cold glow of the screen and felt the last tether snap. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My reaction wasn't emotional. It was operational. In my line of work, emotion is an inefficiency, a bottleneck in the workflow. When a supplier fails to deliver the promised goods, you do not send them a tear-stained letter. You terminate the contract. I swiveled my chair back to my dual monitors. I minimized the supply chain audit I had been working on and opened a new tab. My fingers moved across the keyboard with muscle memory, logging into my primary banking portal. Two-factor authentication pinged. I typed in the code. The dashboard loaded. A grid of numbers that made more sense to me than my family ever had. I navigated to the Recurring Transfers tab. There it was, right at the top of the list. Lake House Reno loan, $2,900, scheduled to withdraw on the 1st of the month. That was 4 days away. For the last year and a half, that transfer had been the only thing keeping the contractors paid and the materials moving. It was the lifeblood of my father's vanity project. I stared at the little toggle switch next to the active status. It was green. Alive. The cursor hovered over it. I didn't think about the deck I wouldn't get to stand on. I didn't think about the lake view I paid for but wasn't allowed to see. I thought about the text message. "You ruin the aesthetic." I clicked. A dialog box popped up, asking if I was sure I wanted to cancel this recurring payment. I clicked yes, with a force that rattled the spacebar. But I wasn't done. Canceling the payment was just a pause. I needed a deletion. I went into the Manage Beneficiaries setting. I found Thomas, Dad. I selected the profile and hit delete. I archived the transaction history. I scrubbed the financial connection until the screen was blank. Then, I picked up my phone. The screen was still glowing with Alyssa's text. I didn't reply. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction they could screenshot and mock in their group chat. I tapped the info icon. Block caller. I went to my father's contact. Block caller. I went to Aunt Susan, knowing she would be the first flying monkey sent to guilt-trip me when the check didn't clear. Block caller. The silence that filled my apartment then was heavy. But it wasn't the suffocating weight of rejection I was used to. It was the cold, sterile silence of a clean ledger. I sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their permission to exist. I had treated them exactly how they treated me, like a transaction that no longer offered a return on investment. I closed my laptop. The screen went black. And for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming of water. The Michigan lake house was supposed to be the family legacy. That was the phrase my father, Thomas, used whenever he called me on a Sunday night, his voice thick with the false gravity of a man protecting an empire. He wasn't asking for money, he would say. He was asking for an equity injection. He claimed he was asset-rich but cash-poor, a temporary liquidity issue that would be solved as soon as the market turned. I believed him. Or rather, I chose to believe him because the alternative was admitting that my father was a financial black hole. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop titled Legacy Investment. I scrolled through the rows. New roof, $12,000. Deck reinforcement, $8,500. Dock stabilization, $6,000. Emergency plumbing, $4,000. line after line of crises that only my salary could fix. In total, I had wired $52,000 over the last 18 months. $52,000. That money didn't come from a trust fund. It came from 60-hour weeks at the logistics firm. It came from skipping vacations for 3 years straight. It came from driving a sedan with a dent in the rear bumper because I couldn't justify the deductible to fix it when my father needed lumber for the deck. I ate frozen dinners while funding a lakeside renovation for a family that didn't even invite me to see the finished product. I know what you are thinking. How does a senior supply chain analyst, someone who dissects million-dollar contracts for a living, get scammed by her own father? Was I stupid? Was I desperate? No. I was suffering from the sunk cost fallacy of affection. In economics, the sunk cost fallacy occurs when you continue to invest in a failing project solely because you have already invested so much. You throw good money after bad because stopping feels like admitting that the initial investment is gone forever. That is what love had become for me. A bad asset. When I sent the first $5,000, I convinced myself it was a one-time loan. When he asked for the next $5,000, I felt a sick knot in my stomach. But I reasoned that if I didn't send it, the first $5,000 would be wasted on a half-finished job. I kept paying, not because I believed he would change, but because I was terrified of walking away with nothing. I thought if I just invested enough, if I just covered one more invoice, the ledger would finally balance, and I would be upgraded from resource to daughter. But looking at the text message from Alyssa, watching the blue light of the screen blur as my eyes grew tired, I realized the truth. There is no return on investment with a narcissist. They do not pay dividends. They only charge management fees. I hadn't been building a legacy. I had been paying rent for a space in their lives that they never intended to let me occupy. The $52,000 was gone. I accepted that now. It was the tuition fee for the most expensive lesson of my life. I closed the spreadsheet. I didn't delete it, though. I saved a copy to a flash drive. Because while the money was gone, the evidence remained, and I had a feeling I was going to need it. The silence broke on Thursday, not with an apology, but with the chaotic arrival of the flying monkeys. I had blocked the main numbers my father, Alyssa, Aunt Susan, but I had underestimated their reach. It started with a voicemail from an unknown number. I let it go to inbox, then listened to it over my lunch break, my headphones shielding me from the office chatter. It was Aunt Susan, calling from her husband's phone. "Ashley, you are killing your father with stress," she hissed, her voice trembling with that specific brand of weaponized fragility my family specialized in. "He's been up all night pacing. His blood pressure is through the roof. If he has a stroke, that's on your conscience. Call him back." I deleted the message. Then I blocked the number, but they were just getting started. That evening, I logged into a burner TikTok account I used for market research. The algorithm, cruel and efficient, served me Alyssa's latest video immediately. She was sitting in her car, ring light reflecting in her eyes, wiping away a tear that looked suspiciously well-timed. "Story time," she began, her voice soft and wounded. "Have you guys ever had a toxic family member who uses money to control you? Like, they give you gifts but then hold it over your head forever? My sister literally cut off my dad's renovation funds 2 days before the reveal because she wasn't the center of attention. Now we might not be able to pay the contractors. It's just so sad when people value their ego over family." The comments were a cesspool of sympathy. "Cut her off, sis," one user wrote. "That's financial abuse," another chimed in. I watched it twice, feeling a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. They were rewriting history in real time. I wasn't the victim of exploitation. I was the abuser wielding financial power. But the audacity peaked on Friday morning. I received an email notification from GoFundMe. A campaign had been launched by Thomas. The title read, "Emergency House Repairs, Abandoned by Family." The photo was a grainy picture of me and him from my college graduation, 10 years ago, back when I still looked at him with hope. The description was a masterpiece of fiction. "I'm a single father who has poured everything into my family. Recently, I was promised help with critical structural repairs for my home, but that help was pulled without warning due to a personal vendetta. I'm now facing liens and legal action from contractors. Please help me save our family home. He was asking for $30,000. I stared at the screen. He wasn't just asking for money. He was monetizing my betrayal. He was using my face, my graduation photo, to sell a lie about his own victimization. The guilt that had lingered in the corners of my mind, the faint whisper wondering if I had been too harsh, evaporated instantly. It was replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like a blade. He didn't miss me. He missed the money. And he was willing to burn my reputation to the ground to replace it. I took a screenshot of the campaign. Then I took a screenshot of Alyssa's video. I saved them to the same folder as the spreadsheet. The flying monkeys thought they were swarming a helpless victim. They didn't realize they were just providing more data for the audit. I did not engage. I did not leave a comment on the GoFundMe or stitch Alyssa's video with a tearful defense. In the logistics world, when you discover a discrepancy, you do not argue with the warehouse manager. You initiate an audit. I called Tyler. He picked up on the first ring. Tyler is my boyfriend of 3 years, a forensic accountant who finds joy in reconciling balance sheets the way other people find joy in sunsets. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice tight. "I saw it," I said. "Are you free this weekend? I need to hire you." "You don't need to hire me, Ashley. I'm coming over." "No," I corrected him. "I need this to be official. I want a forensic audit of every receipt I was sent versus the actual work done. I want to pull the property tax records, the building permits, the contractor invoices. I want to know exactly where $52,000 went." Tyler arrived an hour later with his laptop and a takeout bag of Thai food. We turned my dining table into a war room. On one screen, we had the spreadsheet of my transfers. On the other, the county's public records database. We started digging. It took 4 hours to find the first crack. The invoice for the deck reinforcement was for $8,500. It was dated June 12th. Tyler pulled up the building permits for that month. There were none. No permit had been filed for deck work at that address in the last 5 years. "Maybe he did it unpermitted?" Tyler suggested, though he looked skeptical. "Maybe," I said. "Check the lumber supplier." The invoice was from a company called Lakeside Timber and Supply. I Googled them. The business had permanently closed 2 years ago. The invoice was a forgery, a template downloaded from the internet, filled out with fake numbers. My stomach turned over, but I pushed the nausea down. We kept going. The new roof? For $12,000? The roofing company existed, but when we called to verify the invoice number, the receptionist told us that estimate had been voided because the client never paid the deposit. It wasn't just mismanagement, it was fraud. Systematic, deliberate fraud committed by my own father. He had been creating fake paper trails to extract money from me, month after month. "Ashley," Tyler said softly, turning his screen toward me. "Look at this." He had pulled up the property tax records. The taxes hadn't been paid in 2 years. There was a lien on the house. The emergency funds I had sent to cover the tax bill 6 months ago had never made it to the county treasurer. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. I wasn't just a daughter who had been taken advantage of. I was a creditor who had been embezzled. The realization crystallized everything. The hurt, the betrayal, the confusion, it all hardened into something cold and sharp. I opened a new Word document. I didn't write a letter to my dad. I drafted a formal demand letter. Not for repayment, I knew the money was gone, but a cease and desist regarding the defamation. I attached the ledger. Every transfer, every fake invoice, every lie. I wasn't Ashley, the disappointed daughter, anymore. I was the auditor. And I was about to close the books. During the deep dive audit, Tyler found the smoking gun. It was buried in the wire transfer records from 6 months ago, the $7,200 I had sent for emergency foundation repair. My father had claimed the basement was flooding, sending me photos of water damage that I now realized were probably pulled from Google Images. "Ash," Tyler said, his voice flat. "Look at the routing number. I leaned in. The recipient wasn't a construction company. It was Lakeside Marine and Power Sports. Tyler typed quickly, tracing the invoice number associated with the wire. A receipt popped up. It wasn't for concrete or waterproofing. It was a down payment on a 24-foot luxury pontoon boat. The Sun Chaser Elite. Leather seats, premium sound system, wet bar. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the laptop fan. He bought a boat, I whispered. He let the foundation rot so he could buy a boat. It gets worse, Tyler said. Look at the financing. He didn't just use your cash for the down payment. He listed you as a guarantor. I felt the blood drain from my face. He what? He used your social security number. He forged your signature on the loan application. I stared at the screen, at the loopy, practice scrawl that was supposed to be my name. It was the same handwriting that used to sign my report cards. The same handwriting that had signed the birthday cards I kept in a shoebox under my bed. It wasn't just greed. It was a pathology. My father didn't see money as a tool for survival. He saw it as a tool for image maintenance, to a narcissist. Looking successful is a biological need, as vital as oxygen. The crumbling foundation didn't matter because no one could see it. But the boat? The boat was visible. The boat signaled status. The boat told the neighbors he was winning. He felt entitled to my money for the boring stuff, taxes, repairs, food, so he could reserve his own resources for the important stuff, his ego. He didn't see it as stealing. In his mind, he was just allocating funds to the most critical asset in his portfolio, himself. I thought about the dent in my sedan. I thought about the ramen noodles. I thought about the nights I stayed late at the office to earn the overtime pay that bought him a wet bar on a pontoon. He stole my identity, I said, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. Yes, Tyler said. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the city lights, blurring through the rain. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I felt a strange, cold clarity. The man I had been trying to save didn't exist. He was a fiction, a character played by a con artist who happened to share my DNA. Print it, I said, turning back to Tyler. Print everything. And find out where that boat is docked. Why? Tyler asked. Because, I said, picking up my phone. If my name is on the loan, then technically, I have the right to decide where it goes. And I think it's time for a repossession. Saturday afternoon arrived with a cloudless blue sky, the kind of weather that Instagram filters are made for. I wasn't at the lake. I was sitting on my sofa in the city, an iPad propped up on the coffee table, watching my sister Alyssa's live stream. She was standing on the new cedar deck, the deck I had paid for, holding a glass of champagne. Welcome to the renovation reveal, she chirped, panning the camera to show the glistening water and the guests mingling in linen and sundresses. Dad worked so hard on this. It's finally perfect. In the background, I saw my father, Thomas. He was wearing a navy blazer, holding court near the railing, gesturing expansively as if he were the lord of the manor. He looked successful. He looked unbothered. He looked like a man who hadn't stolen his daughter's identity to buy a 24-foot toy. And here's the crown jewel, Alyssa said, walking down the dock. She pointed the camera at the Sun Chaser Elite pontoon boat bobbing gently in the water. Dad's new baby. Isn't she gorgeous? I took a sip of my tea. Wait for it, I whispered. At 2:14 in the afternoon, the sound of a heavy diesel engine cut through the party chatter. A large, industrial-grade towboat rounded the bend. It wasn't sleek. It was painted a bright, aggressive orange, with Lakeside Asset Recovery stenciled in black letters on the side. On the screen, I saw heads turn. Alyssa laughed nervously. Oh, looks like some maintenance crew is passing by, but the boat didn't pass. It slowed. It turned. It headed straight for our dock. 2 men in jumpsuits hopped off. One of them held a clipboard. My father rushed down the stairs, his face flushing a deep, angry red. I couldn't hear what he was saying over the stream, but I saw his arms waving. The repo man didn't flinch. He handed my father a paper, then walked past him to the pontoon. Alyssa's camera shook. Guys, just a sec. She tried to end the stream, but in her panic, she fumbled the phone. It didn't cut the feed. It just fell, landing face up on the dock, giving the entire internet a worm's eye view of the disaster. You can't take it! I heard my father scream, his voice shrill and breaking. I have guests. Do you know who I am? We have a repossession order authorized by the primary guarantor, a deep voice replied. Step away from the asset, sir. Authorized by the primary guarantor. That was me. Since he had forged my signature, the bank considered it my boat. And when I called them yesterday with the police report number regarding the identity theft, I told them exactly where to find their collateral. I watched as they unhitched the Sunchaser Elite. I watched as my father scrambled to untie the ropes, trying to physically hold the boat back, slipping on the wet wood, looking small and desperate and pathetic. The orange boat roared to life, towing the luxury pontoon away, leaving a wake of white foam and total humiliation. My phone rang. The screen flashed Thomas. I answered. I didn't say hello. I just listened. You spiteful little witch, he shrieked. He was hyperventilating. You ruined it. You ruined everything. The neighbors are watching. My friends are watching. How could you do this to your own family? I didn't do it, Dad, I said, my voice calm, steady, unmoving. The bank did. That's what happens when you commit fraud. I was going to pay it back, he sobbed, the anger collapsing into begging. I just needed time. Ashley, please. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake. We can fix this. I'm your father. You can't shut me out like this. Open the door, Ashley. Please, just open the door. I looked around my quiet apartment. I thought about the lock on my front door. I thought about the boundaries I had spent 30 years trying to build with sand, only to watch them wash away every time he needed cash. Dad, I said softly, you don't understand the architecture of a door. What? He sputtered. A locked door isn't an act of hate, I told him. It isn't a punishment. A door is a boundary. It protects the things inside from the weather, from thieves, from chaos. You are banging on the door, screaming that I'm cruel for locking it. But you're the one who stole the key. I didn't lock you out to hurt you. I locked the door to keep my peace safe, and you aren't getting back in. I hung up. The fallout was absolute. The repossession triggered a cascade. The bank called in the lien on the house. The property tax fraud was exposed. Without my monthly equity injections, Thomas couldn't float the payments. The lake house was foreclosed upon 3 months later. The legacy he was so obsessed with building turned out to be nothing but a rental he couldn't afford. He moved into a small apartment near the airport. Alyssa stopped talking to him when the money ran out. The family facade didn't just crack. It shattered into dust. As for me, I got a raise at the logistics firm. With the $2,900 a month I was no longer sending into a black hole, I qualified for my own mortgage. I bought a condo in the city. It isn't a mansion. It doesn't have a dock, but it has a balcony that faces the sunset, and every square inch of it belongs to me. I sat on that balcony on a Tuesday night, a glass of wine in my hand, my laptop open on my lap. I opened the file named Legacy Investment, the spreadsheet with the $52,000 of red ink. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt solvent. I moved the cursor to the file. I right-clicked. I selected Delete. The file vanished. The recycle bin emptied. The ledger was finally, permanently, balanced. If you've ever had to close the door on someone to save yourself, share this story. You aren't alone.